In the winter of 1953 to 1954, the town of Bladenboro, North Carolina, was terrorized by a creature that outsiders dubbed the Bladenboro Beast or the Vampire Beast. It was called that because the jugular veins of the animals that it attacked were severed, and usually every drop of blood was drained from their bodies. And some newspaper articles called it the Bleeder Beast of Bladenboro. The first reported encounter didn't happen in Bladenboro, however, but in Clarkton, which is less than 10 miles away. And on December 29th, 1953, a woman went outside to investigate why her neighbor's dogs were barking. But what she found was a large cat-like creature that she thought was a mix between a lion and a bear, but it ran into the woods before she could get a good look at it. 2 days later, it showed up again, but this time it was near Bladenboro, where 2 farm dogs had been drained of blood. Soon, the police chief would be inundated with reports of dogs being attacked from across Bladen County. Bladenboro is in Bladen County, and it's about 140 miles east of Charlotte, and as of the 2010 census, the population was less than 2,000. It's mostly a farming community, and it's one of the oldest counties in North Carolina, and it's located about 60 to 70 miles northeast of Wilmington, which is on the coast of North Carolina. It's also known for its forests, its swamps, and its lakes. Descriptions of the creature vary, but it was usually described as dog or cat-like, but incredibly vicious and very large. And witnesses say that it was about 5 feet long with bushy hair, a long tail, a large head with long fangs. It also had pointed ears, and that it resembled a bear or a panther. Another person described it as small and noted that there was a little one just like it running beside it. A hunter claimed to have heard the creature scream while he was out hunting and said that it sounded like a panther. Even though descriptions of its appearance varied, most agreed on the sound that it made. It sounded partly human in an unearthly way, and it was truly unnerving. It sounded like a woman being attacked or hurt. On December 15th, 5 dogs and 3 chickens were killed, and they were horribly mutilated, and no blood was seen. And the tracks that it left measured 4 inches in length. And I'll spare you the gory animal mutilation details, and you can read about those if you'd like. I'll put the link in the description. On New Year's Eve, the police chief was called out to a nearby farm. The farmer was distraught because 2 of his dogs had been killed viciously by something powerful and large. Both dogs had been drained of blood. It killed one dog at 10:30 and it left it there. So the owner wrapped up his dog and put it in a blanket. Around 1:30 in the morning, it came back and it killed the other dog and took it off. They found it 3 days later, grotesquely mutilated. 2 more dogs were found dead on January the 3rd. An autopsy was performed on one of the dogs, and it was reported that there wasn't more than 2 or 3 drops of blood in them. And the police chief decided that it was time to call for some help. The town was terrified, and children were kept away from school, and no one wanted to be outside after sunset. And those with outhouses used what they called a thunder jug. And a thunder jug is a big jug that could be used at night and emptied each day. News sources all along the coast and in many other states reported on the strange killings, and nearly overnight, Bladenboro became a recognizable name. While the creature seemed to prefer dogs, it did attempt to attack a person once. And on January the 5th, a 21-year-old woman was in her home when she heard some strange sounds outside. The dogs sounded like they were whimpering, and when she went outside, she saw a massive cat-like creature approaching her dogs, and then it quickly turned its eyes on her. And it rushed at her, and she screamed before running inside to get her husband, and the creature just crept back into the woods. That encounter proved that the Beast of Bladenboro was real, and that it could be dangerous to people, and the police chief said that tracks in the dirt road in front of the home were bigger than a silver dollar. As more and more newspapers picked up the story, Bladenboro would be inundated with hunters wanting to catch the Beast of Bladenboro for bragging rights. A team of professional hunters was brought in from Wilmington to track down the culprit. And hunters with large packs of tracking dogs and floodlights came to Bladenboro to capture what was killing off so many pets and livestock, and big game hunters even came from miles away. Several of the hunting dogs would whimper and get closer to the fire, displaying the extrasensory perception, which supposedly is what animals do when vampires are nearby, the police chief said. This also gave rise to the notion that the beast might be something supernatural or mutated, as few animals in the world particularly feed off of solely blood. Over 600 men came to the tiny town, and 4 Delta Kappa Epsilon fraternity brothers from the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill went out into the swamp, and they were armed with rifles. They wanted to mount the creature's head on their wall, but the thing is, no one knew exactly what they were hunting. The police chief had plans to use live dogs as decoys for the hunters, but the Asheville Humane Society was vehemently against it, which I appreciate. And trained police dogs found fresh tracks, but they refused to follow the trail. And hunters said that the animal's circling movement suggested that it might have offspring or a mate nearby. And the decision to end the hunt came about because overanxious hunters could have shot someone by mistake, thinking that they were the creature. Even young boys were carrying guns. On June 13th, 3 miles from town, some hunters tracked and found a large bobcat that was trapped by a local farmer. Several dogs had been killed up to this point. They hung the 25-pound bobcat up a flagpole in the center of town, and underneath it was a sign that read, "This is the beast of Bladenboro." He snapped a picture, and the film was sent to a state newspaper with a caption, "The Bladenboro beast has been captured. This is it." Its picture in the newspaper helped the town rest a little easier. However, it didn't explain the lack of blood in the animals. A cougar, a bobcat, or a panther probably would have left some blood in them. And whether the bobcat was responsible or not, the mayor didn't know, but he saw an opportunity to get rid of the problem. And after a week or so, things settled back to normal. The hunters left town, and the reports of killings stopped coming in. Then, in 2007, it returned, but this time it was in other cities within North Carolina. In Bolivia, North Carolina, a man named Bill Robertson went outside, and he noticed that his pit bull Ray Ray wasn't moving. And he said that when he went to pick him up, he was a lot lighter than he should have been. What was left just came out of the dog's body. So Bill buries Ray Ray, but the next morning, his body was back in the yard, and he was laying in the same exact spot that he was found in the day before. They found animal tracks and signs of digging in the family's garden. Neighbors within a 2-mile radius that kept their dogs chained outside reported attacks on their dogs. A chained dog is a sitting duck because they obviously cannot run away when they're being attacked. And the prints were about 4.5 inches in diameter, and the county's health department issued a warning urging people to use caution when they were outdoors. The story hit the papers during a very slow news week, so it got more attention than it normally would have, and papers from all over the country were reporting on the story. So more people than the town could handle descended on Bladenboro. And the only other big news regionally was about a then little-known comedian named Andy Griffith making his first appearance on The Tonight Show. The mayor considered the whole thing a hoax, even though he was the one who first called the newspapers about the dead dogs and organized the hunters from Wilmington. He found the manner of their deaths strange and said that a little publicity never hurts a town. North Carolina is a great habitat for cryptids, and Bladenboro in particular is surrounded by both forests and swamps, so finding an unknown creature can be very difficult. And in the late 1920s, Charlotte, North Carolina had the beast of Briar Creek, and its attacks were similar to the beast of Bladenboro. A more recent and very mysterious creature named Normie has been seen in Lake Norman, and ghosts and UFOs have also been reported. The first report of Normie, the Lake Norman monster, was in the late 90s, and freshwater jellyfish and alligators have also been seen in the lake, but none of those species should be there. And witnesses describe Normie as a crocodile, an enormous fish, and some even say it looks like a plesiosaur. Valley Crucis, which is Latin for Valley of the Cross, is in the Appalachian Mountains, and it's home to a legend. St. John's Episcopal Church, which was built in the 1860s, has a graveyard that's said to be the territory of a hellhound. The story goes like this. 2 people drove past the church one night when a black shape jumped out from behind a tombstone and into the road. The driver slammed on his brakes, and he saw a snarling black dog that he said was the size of a man, and it had blazing red eyes. So the driver sped away on the curvy road at a very high rate of speed. and the dog was still able to follow along closely. However, once the car crossed the bridge, the dog stopped chasing them, and then he seemed to just melt into the darkness. Some described the beast of Bladenboro as likely being a wolverine. A man from Lumberton, North Carolina, thought that the creature was a German Shepherd and a Hound mix named Big Boy that he gave to a young man who lived along the edge of Big Swamp. Big Boy was dark and had a long bushy tail, and he was capable of leaping over a 6-foot fence. According to other witnesses and some trackers, it was likely a wildcat, but its identity hasn't been confirmed, which is usually the case in these situations. And some experts speculated that maybe the animal lapped up the blood after crunching on the bones and the bodies rather than actually sucking it out. And because of all of the attention and notoriety that the animal received, some people were attracted to the creature myth for personal gain, and some hunters would kill bobcats and display them as if they were the legendary beast. They would even ask for payment to view the animal. And one resident in Bladenboro later confessed that he intentionally created fake evidence of the creature for attention. Describing the incident years later, the mayor said, "A little publicity never hurt a small town," and that the creature was 10% real and 90% imagination. In 2008, the attacks were happening all over again. So the History Channel series Monster Quest looked into it, and they concluded that the culprit might have been a cougar, and attacks have continued to be reported on and off. Hiram Hester, a former local business owner, took the history of the Beast of Bladenboro and helped the economy of the town with the annual festival called Beast Fest. Some older residents are reluctant to talk about the beast, and they say that there is such a thing as too much publicity for a small town. And some say that it was all a hoax, but others say that it's true. Regardless, most are satisfied with the bobcat finding, but some are still skeptical of what lurks in the woods.